On today's show, let's do a little progress report on Suns general manager Brian Gregory. Is he succeeding? Is he failing? Plus, a little check-in from sweet Bradley Beal. Let's talk about that and much more on this edition of Locked On Phoenix Suns.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Into Locked On Phoenix Suns. My name is Benjamin Garcia, host of the Ben Garcia Show mornings on YouTube and a credentialed Arizona sports media member covering your Phoenix Suns 365 days out of the year. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this beautiful Friday, Thursday night for some of you guys that are watching this early on YouTube. Don't forget, Locked On Suns is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So click that follow or subscribe button and do what thousands, dare I say, millions of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer and get locked onto the Phoenix Suns here each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. You know, it always irks me when people are like, oh, it's the offseason. There is so much to talk about. I don't even want to finish that sentence. There's a lot of things going on, and there's things we got to check up on before the season happens. So with that being said, let's start. We're going to get to some Bradley Beal stuff at the end of the show. That's some time for us to kind of poke fun, warn the Clippers fans about Bradley Beal, because there was an interesting quote that was put on by Tyronn Lue from the Shannon Sharp show, Club Shay Shay. But without further ado, before we visit sweet Bradley Beal at the end of the show, let's do a little check-in on our guy, Brian Gregory. And I think it's important that when we do this check-in, I remind everyone where I was at. And this is kind of like a progress report, right? If you remember when you were a kid, grade school, high school, it's not the final grade. It's a progress report. After 4-6 weeks into the school semester, you'll get a here's your progress report. Here's where you're at, A, B, C, D, or F. It turns out my wife's a teacher. It turns out these days they barely even give out Fs, which is crazy, but this isn't the final thing. This isn't what you go home with winter break on, and that report card has an A, B, C, D, or an F on there. And so let's just check up on our guy, Brian Gregory. When Brian Gregory, and I put everything in totality, and to remind you of what I thought about Brian Gregory, I hated the hire. And I think it's important that when I give new analysis on it, new information, I'll change my opinion, that I remind you where I was at before, because I think that's important. I'm not someone that's just going to stick to a wrong opinion if it's the wrong opinion. But when I started off with Brian Gregory, I didn't love it. I joked that it was Matt Ishbia's fraternity brother, and that is kind of what it felt like. The connection that was so strong with him and Matt Ishbia that he was just gifted the job. I work in a space where it's all about, unfortunately, who you know. And so that irks me more than anything else. The fact that Brian Gregory didn't earn this job, even and we'll get to that in a second, if he's done better than I thought at this job, he didn't earn it. He didn't. And he didn't have the resume for you to say, well, killer head coach. Because that wasn't the case either. The best place he coached at was Dayton. And everyone will point out to me, well, he's got 300 career wins in college basketball. Ben, where are your wins? Where is your, why are you allowed to judge so harshly? Well, I'd give you 300 wins if you were Mike Krzyzewski or, Bill Self from Kansas or Roy Williams years ago. He will have 300 wins against Panera Bread State, McDonald's University, and State Farm Community College. It wasn't great competition. If I'm not mistaken, he only had one NCAA tournament win. He wasn't qualified for this job at all. And then I went to his opening press conference, and I went with an open mind. I feel like I'm pretty good at that. I can just clean off the slate and say, impress me, wow me. Gregory was awful. I mean, I joked on Locked On Rockets when I went on Jackson Gatlin's Locked On Rockets, and we were talking about the Kevin Durant trade. And I said, if you stood a potato up on a stool, that would have more personality than Brian Gregory. And I judged him harshly for that. Because as the general manager, you have to have that shark mentality, that billionaire mentality, that I got here because I fleeced other teams. And I said, after that opening presser, opposing teams are licking their chops, getting ready to speak with Brian Gregory. Now, that's not everything when it comes to general managing in the NBA. And this is why I cut him a little bit of slack. You can argue who's in charge of the Phoenix Suns, Matt Ishbia, Brian Gregory. I think most of us everydayers here would agree. 85% of this team is controlled by Matt Ishbia, and Matt Ishbia alone. But to act like Gregory doesn't have a hand in some things, and I think, weeks ago when they released that draft night propaganda video where he said, we're going with Kobe Bryant, that's my guy, I'm taking him, I'm the GM, kind of trying to show his, his dominance over everyone else, even over Matt Ishbia. And so you saw some personality there. But for the most part, you kind of thought it was Ishbia. But Brian Gregory's the general manager. Someone's going to get the credit for this. And if we're just doing the progress report, he got off to a rough start. I didn't love how he was hired, and I certainly hated him at his press conference, which I do think is something. You got to be a leader of men. You got to be someone that when you go to the table, the opposing team is almost scared to negotiate with you. You think people are licking their chops, getting ready to negotiate with Brad Stevens? No one wants to do a deal with him because they're afraid they're going to look like an idiot after, even if they feel like they're winning the trade. And with Brian Gregory, it felt like opposing teams were like, I'll do a deal with this guy. What the hell do I care? We'll get to some of his good and bad moves in the next segment. But in the totality of it all, before we dive deeper into it, if you told me that the Suns roster was going to look like this after the end of last season, which is deeper, younger, better defensively, some issues offensively, but for the most part, they solved a lot of their issues where I still believe they're not going to be a championship level team or a conference championship team. I think that will come with time. But they're going to be better than they were last year. And I wasn't sure that was going to be the case. But at the end of the day, none of that really matters. As of right now, if we're giving him a grade, Gregory's got a solid B. And it's only a B because the early returns were so bad. He didn't earn this job, and I hated him at his press conference. You are allowed to grade GMs however you want, and I'm not going to hold you accountable to it. But I have a certain way that I hold GMs accountable. And that press conference matters, and how you got the job matters to me. Call it a bias, call it wrong, call it blind, whatever. That's how I grade them. But with some of the things that he's done, the initial Kevin Durant trade, which was rough at first, but then turned into something more, and not just diving after the next star head first, the patience, the construction of the roster, that deserves pulling that guy up from what I thought initially an F to a straight solid B with the ability to go higher. Remember, this is the progress report. This isn't the report card. We'll do another progress report maybe at the trade deadline, and we'll do a report card at the end of the year. But the initial results are, okay, you have my attention. But what I will say is, nothing will ever matter. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. I actually do prepare for these shows, believe it or not. The only thing that will determine Brian Gregory's competency as a general manager is, did you keep Devin Booker on this team or did you not? Meaning if next year goes horribly and Booker says, guys, I'm sorry. I love this city. I'm reaching my 30s. I'm approaching my 30s. It's time for me to go find another team. we're going to talk about Brian Gregory in a different light. You lost the franchise player. But the other way is if he keeps Booker here, that means that they probably built and constructed a roster around him that can win a championship. That means he was patient. He didn't go after the biggest star. And instead of crumbling, losing all the star pieces, Durant, Beal to an extent, Devin Booker, you were able to keep one guy around, retool this roster and figure it out. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I could give him an A, B, C, D, E, F, G, divided by exclamation point. That's not what matters. It's at the end of the day, can you construct a roster good enough for Devin Booker to compete for a championship? And I do think he is starting to do that. So with that being said, let's get in even deeper. We gave the grade, B-, because there wasn't all just great moves. We'll dive into those, but there was also still a glaring hole in something that I still don't understand. So we'll talk about that and much more next. But first, today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. As I struggle to find the lower third here for Game Time. There it is, our friends over at Game Time. So listen, we're just having all sorts of trouble over here on the show as this doesn't load, but overall, my friends over at Game Time, listen, I got to tell you, they're a great place to be. They do a lot of things really well. One of the things I love about Game Time is, like, if you're someone who is wanting to go to a baseball game or a big concert and you want to go with friends, but you don't want to spend a ton of money, what Game Time allows you to do is not only do they allow you to see that prices go down closer to the event, whether it's a game or a concert starting, but they also allow you to see your seats before you buy them, meaning your view's not going to be obstructed, or you're not going to, you're not going to be able to see something that you weren't expecting. Game Time takes all of that guesswork out of it. Whether it's college football, a big game, an event, as the times get closer, tickets start to drop. And I do this with my wife all the time. I tell her, "Hey, listen, let's hit up a baseball game. Let's hit up an Arizona State University football game this weekend. But let's wait until 5, 6 o'clock when tickets start to drop. We know we will go. We'll make the plan to go. But let's see if we can get tickets a little cheaper." That's what Game Time does for you, as well as being able to see your seats before you buy them. So take the guesswork out of it. We take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKED. It's code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. So I don't think it was just sunshine and rainbows in Brian Gregory's first time as the head coach. As the general manager for the Phoenix Suns. I think some of that comes with some blemishes. But first, to start off with the right things that happened with this team, is starting off with the Kevin Durant deal. What at one point looked like something that was going to be a disaster. We thought that this team might get Jabari Smith in the deal. We thought that they might recoup one of their first round picks. That didn't happen. If you remember, we went live immediately, me and Brendan, and we talked about that deal. They got Jalen Green back, who was mostly salary cap filler. They got the number 10 overall pick back, which was a real asset, an actual asset that you could have. And then Dylan Brooks. And 5 second-round picks. And you immediately said to yourself, well, this is not good. And it wasn't a good enough return. At least not then. And then he goes out and he's able to get Rasheer Fleming. Kamon Malawach falls to them. They maneuver around again. They get Kobe Bryant and they hit things right on the tee. That is where Brian Gregory succeeded. I think it takes a real person to drop your you-know-what on the table and say to everyone else, listen, this is what we got. And I know you're going to rip it apart. I know you're not going to like the deal, but I've got a plan in place. And that's a really good spot to be if you're Brian Gregory, to know, yes, this is the deal, but it's not something I'm going to continue with. We're going to find more. And that's how we get Rasheer Fleming on this team. We manipulate the draft and we get Kamon Malawatch to fall to 10. And then Kobe Brea, who, yes, is a second-round guy, and I'm lower on him than you guys are, but I have to be honest. He looked pretty good. He might be a very serviceable player in the NBA, and for a second-round pick, that's all you can hope for. And then the other thing, establishing an identity with this team. Nigel Hayes-Davis, one of the things I like about that signing, he is someone who, had to start in the NBA, and then he had to go overseas. He built up these calluses of playing overseas and became a really good player there. Won the MVP there, if I'm not mistaken, overseas. But he fits the identity of what the Suns want to do. Defensive player, shot the three ball pretty better overseas. Wasn't great to start his NBA career, but now it's better. And that Nigel Hayes-Davis thing just established the culture that the Suns were building. Mark Williams, Kamon Malawatch, Rasheer Fleming, Nigel Hayes-Davis, Ryan Dunn, Dylan Brooks. We're going big. We're going mean. We're going physical. And we're going to be a tough-nosed defensive team. That's what Brian Gregory did. That is a good thing. And then lastly, the last what I think was a major good thing that this Suns team did was extend Devin Booker. And extend Devin Booker was absolutely and always the right thing to do. Oftentimes people say, well, why trade him? Why? And Brian Gregory heard all that noise, all the noise. Well, just trade Devin Booker. You're not going to be competing. No, you say we're not going to be competing. I say differently. You want to trade Devin Booker to name a team, the Golden State Warriors, and they give you 6 first-round picks from, let's just say something absurd, something ridiculous. 4 first-round picks, 3 pick swaps, all of that. Great. Does anyone think the Warriors are going to be picking in the top 10 in the next 5 years? That's a pretty good organization. It's probably not happening. So you want to trade Devin Booker for a bunch of 26th overall picks in the draft? Well, he's not worth the money. Really? Because it's a percentage of cap league. Devin Booker is going from making like 30% to 32% of the cap. The money is just a figment of your imagination. Seriously, it's the easiest way to know if you know what you're talking about or not. You either pay Devin Booker or you get a bunch of 25th overall picks back and try to find your next Devin Booker. Why would I do that when I already have him? Brian Gregory ignored the noise and re-signed Devin Booker, even though to everyone else, $75 million a year. This is ridiculous. Does Gregory know what he's doing? He's getting fleeced by Devin Booker. No, it was a plan in place. And it was we're still going to build around this guy. We understand if we're drafting, we're just trying to find another one of this guy. And we believe in his ability to pair with Jalen Green, even if someone like myself doesn't buy that. Here was because again, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Here's the biggest thing that I absolutely hated. Like I still hate this to this day. And I won't stand back on this. Waiving and stretching Bradley Beal made no sense. I still, in my head, we're going to talk about Bradley Beal here in a second, and we're going to warn some Clippers fans about his shenanigans and nonsense. I don't understand making a 2-year problem what is now a 5-year problem. I can't remember exactly how much he is going to get over the next 5 seasons, but I know it's a lot of money. And every year for the next 5 years, I'm 27 years old. To put that in perspective, my unborn child will be 4 years old at that point. A lot of life will have went by, and they'll still be paying Bradley Beal. And every year we're going to have to talk about, well, I wish they could get XYZ player, but they can't because they're still paying Bradley Beal. And then people will tell me, well, Ben, you don't understand all the benefits that they get from waiving Bradley Beal. The only benefit that mattered was Matt Ishbia's pockets. And I will never buy into saving billionaires money. You could have gotten under the cap next year, traded him then when he was expiring deal, but you decided not to. And I will stand by that. That was the wrong thing to do. Because now, over the next couple of years, when my child is born and, I've moved on to being even an older man, I'll be 32 years old when they stop paying Bradley Beal. Like, that is crazy to think of. And they're going to have to keep passing over player because they wanted to save themselves money now, Matt Ishbia's wallet. And I hate that. That's a GM thing. He allowed that to happen. When in reality, they could have taken their lumps for the next 2 years, and they didn't do so. So that's why I think that also brings down the letter grade that I talked about with Brian Gregory in that first segment. All right. Let's finish up the show. Let's close it out with this. Bradley Beal's back in the news. Everyone's favorite former member of the Big Three, Bradley Beal. Tyronn Lue had some comments on Bradley Beal. And you know what? I've been saving this one for a while. So thank you, Tyronn Lue, for allowing me to have the honor, dare I say privilege, to warn the Los Angeles Clippers about Bradley Beal. So let's do that next. First, today's episode is brought to you by our survey over at the Locked On Podcast Network. We have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcasts even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks for helping us make our podcast even better. Please, guys, take those surveys. I take those things personally. I want to know what you guys think, and I want to know how to make these shows absolutely better. But also, this show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season is almost here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Dude, guys, listen to this. This is absolutely insane. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. That's $5. That's one Abraham Lincoln. Put it on the table. We'll talk about where you could maybe put that money. And you get $300 back in bonus bets. Listen, one of my favorite bets right now, and I just did this on a Sun Devil show just a second ago. For the 2025 Heisman Trophy winner, maybe you don't want to do this right away because it'd take a little bit, but this is one of my favorite bets. All the way down at tied for 9th, plus 2,000, Sam Levitt. I mean, come on. That feels a little too low for someone that should have beat Texas last year in the Peach Bowl. But if you don't like that, hey, the Eagles -7.5, or maybe you just like the money line, -355 on Thursday Night Football against a Micah Parsons-less Dallas Cowboys team. So, with that being said, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app today by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. So check this out, guys. This is pretty interesting. Tyronn Lue is doing the thing where head coaches try to let the fans buy into, no. Bradley Beal doesn't suck anymore. I promise. He was just, quote unquote, overshadowed. And so Tyronn Lue went on Club Shay Shay, a podcast by Shannon Sharp, which don't even get me started. That's the worst name in the world for a podcast. But he had said, when you play for a team like Phoenix, like he did over the past couple of years, you got Booker and KD, and you're the third option. He averaged 18 points, shot 50% from the field, and 43% from three. End quote. Those are unbelievable stats. But when you're playing with Book KD, it kind of gets overshadowed. I think by coming here, I think it's a fresh start. I think it's going to be great for us. This is what's so interesting. Bradley Beal, the Bradley Beal is the ex-girlfriend that is promising her new boyfriend. No. They were crazy. That's why it didn't work out. Did you see me with my first boyfriend in the Washington Wizards? I was awesome. When I wasn't asked to actually win games, I was great. Bradley Beal never will be, and hasn't before in the past, been overshadowed by Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. Bradley Beal has always been overshadowed by his own issues, whether it's injuries that sometimes make you scratch your head and think to yourself, is this guy truly injured or is he hurt? There's a difference between the two, but whatever. But it's also what am I going to get off the court? Bradley Beal is someone who would intentionally poke at fans, talking about his no trade clause, could never take the high road. And as someone that made 50 million large or some obnoxious number, he never took the high road. He wanted to fight with fans. And so, yeah, when you look at Bradley Beal's statistics, he only played in 53 games in both seasons with the Suns. Last year, 17 points, 49% from the field, 38% from three, 80% from free throw. You initially think, yeah, he's gonna flourish here. I'm here to tell you that Bradley Beal is a net negative, not a net positive. I can't buy into the idea that the Suns are just going to be better without Kevin Durant. We know how Kevin Durant feels about me. He doesn't like me. He's not a fan of me. I'm a fan of his game on the floor. Off the floor, I think he's a little kooky in the head, or, nutso in the head at times, going after fans and just doing crazy things. I can't buy that the Suns are going to be better without Kevin Durant. The dude is a freaking animal on the basketball court. I can buy addition by subtraction with Bradley Beal. And we just read his statistics. Oh, they're really great. No, they're not. Because Bradley Beal is physically sometimes available and emotionally never available. He wasn't a leader when they needed him to be, when the things were going haywire. When he went to the bench, sure, he kept his mouth shut, I guess, but also not really. He poked at fans. He reminded fans why they didn't get Jimmy Butler. He could never just keep his mouth shut. And so while we're on the topic, last week I gave you guys my 5 keys for the Phoenix Suns to make the playoffs next year, and one of those keys were a team needs to fall out. And I briefly mentioned this, but I want to get into it just a little bit more. The Los Angeles Clippers were a revolution last year. They probably, honestly, were the 3rd best team in the Western Conference, behind the Nuggets, behind the Thunder. That team doing what they did this offseason, getting older, less twitchier, more injury prone, and a bunch of guys who you don't trust in big spots, that is an obvious team to me that is going to fall backwards, then go forwards in the standings. James Harden, really? When has that guy been reliable for any big game in his career? Same with Bradley Beal. Same with Kawhi Leonard. They are the Phoenix Suns 2.0. Zero leadership and dudes who are never available. And in a league that is increasingly getting more athletic, twitchier, younger, they are literally doing all 3 of those things in the opposite way. They got older, they're not as athletic, and they're not a twitchy team, meaning they're not going to be able to run up and down the floor, and they're going to get ran up and down the floor in a lot of games because they're going to deal with the same issues that the Phoenix Suns dealt with. And adding Bradley Beal to that mix, questioning with yourself, is he going to play tonight? Will he, won't he mentality? That's a bad place to be. So overshadowed? No. Bradley Beal is to blame, or Bradley Beal's success or lack thereof in Phoenix. There's only one person to blame, and it's the same person, Bradley freaking Beal. This is not a Suns issue. He was not overshadowed. This was not a Devin Booker or Kevin Durant issue. So I can't buy this idea that Suns fans think without Kevin Durant, which at times, yes, can be a little bit of a head case off the court. I can't buy that idea that they're going to be better without him. He's a basketball god. Bradley Beal, on the other hand, because you were never sure if he was available. You were never sure what was going on with him mentally. Yes, I expect this team to be better from that standpoint, addition by subtraction. And the Clippers are 100% going to feel every bit of that this season. That's all I got for you guys today, guys. Appreciate you guys tuning into the show here on Locked On Phoenix Suns. Don't forget, as well as we got a big announcement for Locked On college football fans. The Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate coverage football preview, a weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation along with two-time AP Coach of the Year, Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Hawley, and Locked On's local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. So make sure you guys check that out. For myself, everyone in the chat, thank you for tuning in and watching Locked On Phoenix Suns. And I will see you guys sometime early next week. I'm going on a brief vacation, but I will be back with my guy, John Voida. And so until then, I'll see you guys later next week. Have a good one, guys.